Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay. Awesome. Sweet. I can go ahead and get started. Let's see. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah. A little bit about me here. I've been designing professionally since 2020, and I'm a previous designer and director of design at Gacha Creative. I graduated from UCSB in 2023, and I'm currently an associate product designer at BetterHelp. So with a few years of experience under my belt, I've had a lot of interactions with user research, and so I'm excited to talk to you guys a bit about that today. Let's see. Okay. So, like I mentioned, I would love for user research to play a role in this week's design sprint, or design-a-thon. I have a guiding note here that user research can unlock key insights to create designs that truly resonate with your audience. And I'd like you to keep this in mind throughout this presentation and beyond when thinking about why user research is important. By the end of this, I'm hoping that you have an understanding of the importance of user research and its impact on creating user-centered solutions, an overview of different types of user research methods and when to use them, and an ability to apply lean user research into your design-a-thon projects. So, any questions there? If not, I think we're good to go. So tackling goal one, what is user research and why should you care? User experience design is the process of designing products that are useful, easy to use, and a pleasure to engage with. It's also about enhancing the entire experience people have while interacting with a product and just making sure that they find value, satisfaction, and delight in using them. So in recent years, there's been a notable shift towards something called user-centered design in modern product development. You've probably seen a version of this graphic elsewhere, as it's super popular when discussing design processes. But unlike traditional approaches that prioritize technical features, aesthetics, or business objectives, user-centered design places the needs and expectations of users at the forefront of the creative process. So we can dig into the first step of this here, which is research. And here's a definition. Essentially, user research is just getting a clear picture of what users think and why they do what they do. I have here that user research is used to understand the user's needs, behaviors, experience, and motivations through various qualitative and quantitative methods to inform the process of solving for users' problems. And a bit later on in the presentation, we'll talk about what those methods are and how you can apply them to your projects. But moving forward, um, you might be thinking, how could this apply to the projects you're working on this week, and even for those working at multi-million-dollar companies? And I think we can start by saying successful products and services are those that integrate user feedback and insights into their design iterations. You can think about Apple's iPhone. From the start, Apple has invested really heavily in user research for their products by looking at things such as human behavior, preferences, and pain points. Apple has been able to introduce intuitive features that has pushed their products from simple utility to something that's become really invaluable to our daily lives. And in today's competitive market, companies that prioritize user research are able to understand the needs and expectations of their target audience. You can think of other use cases like transforming an existing product or feature, surfacing unknown user pain points, or proving the value of investing in a new product or feature. So essentially, in doing these, they can foster stronger user engagement, loyalty, and ultimately success in the marketplace, which is super important for companies. And if you're thinking about working in product development one day, either on the management or designer side, chances are you'll be working on one or two of these bullet points at some point. So it's nice to get some frame of mind here for the future. So yeah, we have goal number two, but I guess before we move on, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I have checkpoints I'll kind of check as we go. But yeah, goal number two, what are the different kinds of methods? There's a ton of them, and I'm sure I didn't capture them all here. But we can start to sort and understand them using a few different frameworks. And we can start with qualitative versus quantitative. All research methods are either quantitative or qualitative. Qualitative research focuses on capturing subjective insights into users' experiences, aims to understand underlying reasons and motivations and behaviors of individuals, while quantitative research involves collecting and analyzing numerical data to identify patterns, trends, and significance, essentially quantifying user behaviors, which allows for generalizations and statistical insights, which is really important for making design decisions on the product side. Next, we have attitudinal versus behavioral research. Attitudinal research is about understanding users' attitudes, perceptions, and beliefs, essentially delving into the why behind user decision and actions. And behavioral research is about what users do rather than what they say they do or what they would do. And finally, we have generative versus evaluative research. Generative research is all about generating new ideas, concepts, and insights to fuel the design process. You might run brainstorming sessions with groups of users, card sorting, and co-design sessions to inspire creativity and guide the development of these user-centered solutions. On the other hand, evaluative research focuses on assessing the usability, effectiveness, and overall quality of existing designs or prototypes. So essentially, once you've developed a prototype of your product, it's time to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of it. And so you can compare different versions of a design or feature through A/B testing, for example, just to ensure that your design meets user needs and expectations. So continuing on, the types of user research you can or should perform will depend on the type of site, the system or app that you're developing, your timeline and your environment and resources. I have a list here of the 11 best or most used user research methods and when to use them. For example, the start, throughout, or towards the end of your project, as well as contextualizing them with the different types of methods that we were mentioning earlier, like qualitative and quantitative. So good resource here for you. Before we continue, any other questions? Okay, I think we're good. So all that to say, what works best in an agile setting where you're working on 3-day sprints where time is of the essence, you're going to want to choose methods that are lean and adaptable, ensuring that you can quickly move from learning to action. So we can start with understanding the user and problem space. Your goal here is to quickly gather initial insights into the user's needs, problems, and the context. An example of this would be user interviews. You can do quick structured interviews, no more than 30 minutes with a small number of target users, and you're just looking to understand their main challenges and generate a solution that would help them with that. I have some examples here of stuff that I've done in the past. So some tips for user interviews. First, you're going to want to define your objectives. Clearly outline what you learn to or what you aim to learn from the interview, because setting specific goals will help in crafting focused questions that will yield actionable insights. Second, recruit participants who represent your target user group and make sure that you are being diverse in your selection so you get a broad perspective on user needs and experiences. And finally, create a question guide. This is super helpful, like a script. So essentially a list of open-ended questions that encourage detailed responses and include questions about users' behaviors, needs, and challenges related to your design problem. The screenshot I have here is from a previous client project I did with Zoom. Essentially, we did some stakeholder interviews where we were just evaluating education needs when it comes to a resource website. So making sure that I followed those 3 objectives that I just outlined. So we sat down and thought about our objectives early on. We recruited participants who worked in the education space, and then we had a really useful question guide or script that we used to guide these interviews. Moving on, we have competitive analysis. This is essentially spending a few hours doing a review of existing solutions within the market. You can identify what works well with them and where gaps might exist. And for this, your first tip is going to be identify your competitors, both direct and indirect, and gather data on them by researching their products, services, and customer feedback. And then you can also summarize this by analyzing their offerings. So evaluate all their features, their pricing, and quality, information like that. So there's a few different types of analyses you can do, like a gap analysis, SWOT analysis, competitive market analysis, etc. So you can do a bit of research into what you think might be most effective. But for a previous project of mine, which was another designathon, we did a competitive analysis looking at the healthcare space, specifically around COVID-19 testing and information stuff. So you're essentially, well, in this screenshot, we were pulling features that all of the competitors do have, and then adding our own project to further contextualize how we compare to others, what we do best, maybe some weaknesses, but overall just giving viewers more information about what the market landscape looks like currently for our design. So next we have refining ideas and gathering feedback. This is towards the middle of the project. Your goal here is going to be testing initial concepts and gathering feedback to refine your design. Some people do this through prototyping, specifically low fidelity prototypes, just to quickly communicate ideas. And here's an example of what the differences would be for different levels of prototypes. So lo-fi prototypes are basically sketches to quickly explore ideas. That's kind of maybe the first one. Then you have mid-fi prototypes using design software like Figma to I kind of lay out the information a little bit clearer, and then maybe do some initial interaction design. So that's the middle two. And then hi-fi prototypes are detailed and interactive and closely resemble the final product. So these are all screens that I did for a previous project, the one that I was mentioning earlier, and it's kind of showcasing that you don't just jump into a design-a-thon project, or I guess any project, designing hi-fi first. You want to build this up, and in between these rounds, we were doing user feedback sessions, either with the judges or the people around us to validate that our direction was the right one, adjusting the prompt appropriately. So something to keep in mind when working through the prompt. So finally, we have usability testing. So this is short usability testing sessions, about 15-30 minutes long with a handful of users. Usability testing tends to be a time sink. So you just want to focus on immediate reactions in like a basic level of understanding of the prototype. Some information here. First, define your objectives, know what you're testing for, specific usability aspects or the overall experience. Also, recruit participants that are part of your target audience, but keep it few in number. And then you're going to want to prepare tasks or realistic tasks that users will perform during the test. So you can ensure that people are working through the prototype in the way that you're intending them to, and you can catch maybe like logic or misinterpretation errors early on. I have an example here of work that I did recently on BetterHelp, where we were doing some design validation tests on a prototype for our frequently asked questions. So I think this is a little bit more advanced than what you should be doing for Designathon. There are platforms like user testing or Maze that allow you to do really easy usability testing with outside users. But I think you can scale this down a bit and just use the people who are around you. But essentially, we're uploading a prototype. I had a list of tasks that the participants were working through, and I essentially was able to watch this recording, see how they interacted with the product. They spoke their actions back to me, so I was able to identify if there was any errors early on, I could catch them. So super useful tool, but yeah, it's great for evaluating prototypes when you're towards the end of the design process. Okay, and towards the end, we're validating and iterating. So you're making sure that your solution meets user needs and you prepare for further development. So this is solution validation using a more refined prototype to validate the solution with the users, kind of like what I mentioned previously, but just ensuring that the solution effectively addresses the problems that you identified in the start. And another way is a survey. If possible, you can send out a quick one to a broader audience that just allows you to validate that your solution meets desirability, feasibility, and viability constraints. And then some other four smaller notes of things that you should be doing throughout the sprint, the beginning, middle, and towards the end. First being rapid data analysis. After each research activity, you want to quickly analyze the data to extract actionable insights. And this is important because you're going to be using this information to present why your design solution is effective in its approach. And this information will be really valuable when you're discussing this information in case studies and interviews and stuff like that. So you have numbers on hand that you have people who are validating that your solution is effective. Second, we have stakeholder check-ins. So regularly update stakeholders and involve them in the process. We have judges and mentors. Their feedback can be super invaluable and can help you navigate some of the trickier situations, especially if you're learning all this information. Third, remember the ethics of user research, including consent, privacy, and respectful treatment of participants' information. Especially if you're recording user interviews, always ask beforehand. If you're using Google Forms, make sure that you are not collecting email addresses, or if you are, make sure that you're being clear with that information. Just making sure that you are conducting your research ethically and that your work has integrity. Fourth, we have cognitive biases. So spend some time educating yourself on what cognitive biases are and how they can affect research outcomes. And this will help you just be more objective in your research and help you more accurately interpret user feedback. And some final tips for success when it comes to using these methods in designathons. Recruit your participants early before the sprint begins. Identify and recruit potential research participants to ensure that they're available when you need them. Thank your housemates, your parents, friends, other UCSB students, people like that. Be flexible. Be ready to adapt your research methods based on what you're learning. The goal is to learn quickly and iterate on your design, which are both pillars of user research and designathons at their core. You want to be able to work quickly. And third, focus on key insights. Given the time constraints, it's important to focus on extracting and acting on the most critical insights rather than just getting lost on the details. I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed with all the information that you might be gathering. So just focus on the most important things, and it'll make this whole process super, super easy. Okay, cool. So just recapping what we've discussed so far, we understood the importance of user research and talked about how that's playing into the current product development space and how companies might be using that today. We also talked about different user research methods. There's a ton of them, but there's a handful that I think are really effective for designathon use. And there's a lot of resources out there on how to start them and apply them to your projects. And finally, we spoke a bit about how to apply these methods to your designs, especially when you're on a tight timeline. And I gave you a few examples on how I have applied them to my own projects. So that all being said, I think we've reached the end of the presentation. I'd love to open up the floor to any questions. And of course, I'll be available over Discord for any further discussions. If you want links to resources or have questions during the projects, definitely feel free to reach out. But I think that's everything.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite method that you've done before?
Favorite method. I think user interviews are really fun. I think when you say interviews, it sounds intimidating, and it kind of is because you're speaking with people that you may not have interacted with before, but the entire point of the process is to build trust with users. And I think that if you're really excited about finding a potential solution, and designing for it, the insights that you unlock from user interviews can be really, really cool. Like in the screenshot that I shared in this presentation, we were meeting with an educator who just casually brought up like a really amazing insight, and I couldn't wipe the smile off my face. Like I was so excited because he just unlocked like a part of my brain that I wasn't, or like a element that I wasn't thinking about. So yeah, I think once you get into it and you're doing it for the first time and you get experience interviewing, it can be really fun. So that's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, I also feel like it's just fun meeting users and like the people that you're designing for. I feel like it's always really
Exactly.
cool. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? How like far in sorry, I have another question. But like how like far in advance do you like to like start your research process?
I would say, do you mean like for design-a-thons or just like in my professional work?
Um, I guess for both.
Okay, cool.
For both,
So for
yeah.
design-a-thons, I am a huge believer in planning and execution. Like you want to sit down with your teammates and talk about your strategy first before you start designing or coming up with solutions, or delegating tasks. So I think in the very beginning is where I start my research. Even when it comes to like task analysis, when you're breaking down what the prompt is asking for, and then when you come up with a solution, then you have to do a feature or competitive analysis where you're looking at what other people are doing who have similar ideas. So research is like constantly being applied in the process, and so I would definitely say get started as early as possible because it really just it's you're casting a wide net and then you're able to narrow down like your ideas. And I think that's where you get the best ones sometimes, you know. They say like quantity over quality in the beginning, so definitely research as soon as possible in design-a-thons. And then when it comes to professional work, I think the process starts really early on. Like before I even start designing, we'll spend like a week or two just researching, depending on the project. Um, and I think the process is a little bit different compared to design-a-thons because I do have to write like research summaries. And then I usually am coordinating meetings with a bunch of stakeholders like project managers, developers, other designers, to then present this information. And then from there, it's like there's a larger conversation to be had about what we want to do next. So I think the process becomes a little bit more complex when you start involving more people in the professional space. But yeah, I think the research is just as important. You guys can type questions in the chat too. No worries. Okay, cool. Well, if there's no other questions, I think we can end the recording here. Um, yeah, so thank you guys for